Welcome to another episode of Trial Site News. Today we're going to be talking about an article from TrialSiteNews.com by one of our investigative reporters, Mary Beth Pfeiffer, where she covers vaccine-injured individuals who had a chance to speak to Peter Marks, who is the director of the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, otherwise known as the CBER, at the Food and Drug Administration. According to the participants to this meeting, Peter Marks offered canned responses to their stories, punctuated with the "thanks for sharing" line to too many of their grievous stories. So today I'll be pulling from her article and sharing with you directly how this meeting went down. And so from Trial Site News, I am Adrian, and our episode is starting right now. So, in the article by Mary Beth Pfeiffer, she covers a meeting between 20 people who were allegedly harmed by the COVID-19 vaccines, who came to Washington, D.C. seeking help from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. And do you suppose, after traveling from states all across the country to seek an audience with Peter Marks of the FDA, that this meeting would be taking place in person? If you thought yes, then you were wrong. Instead, the group was granted just 1 hour with a top vaccine official. That's right, just a Zoom call from their hotel conference room. No face-to-face meeting for these folks. None for them. Talk about an insult to injury here. As Mary Beth Pfeiffer in her article points out, 2 had lost sons, 16 and 34 years old, soon after their shots. 3 were in wheelchairs, including a girl aged 14, a surgeon, nurse practitioner, teacher, and most others can no longer work. They were once healthy and fit, and many had been eager to be vaccinated. As Brianne Dressen, 41, part of the group, a Utah mother of 2, explained, they were hiding behind a monitor. All of us, we came out here, and Peter Marks could not get out of the house and meet with us. According to the article by Mary Beth Pfeiffer, she wrote that the virtual meeting, which she sat in on, was punctuated by FDA language that the attendees told her they had heard in 5 such meetings before, specifically about the connection between their suffering and COVID vaccinations. As Dr. Peter Marks would tell them repeatedly in the meeting, the data is not sufficiently robust. With these low rates, it is very hard to know what you are looking at, and the rare word was often used, as well as the phrase 1 in a million. Now, beyond telling several gut-wrenching stories, these debilitated Americans, part of a patient advocacy group called React 19, urged the agency to alert doctors to a devastating condition called multisystem inflammatory syndrome, particularly in children. React 19's website lists about 30 science articles on potential vaccine-related MIS, calling it a, quote, poorly understood, underreported hyperinflammation of multiple organ systems. The COVID-associated syndrome may also occur after vaccination, the group argues, and may go unrecognized. The MIS debate has parallels to another vaccine injury, myocarditis, that claimed the life of Ernesto Ramirez Jr., 16, 5 days after his Pfizer mRNA shot. The boy's father, Ernesto Sr., has since campaigned to gain recognition for the condition, with an FDA official telling him at one point, quote, "This is a situation we are all going through." But as Mary points out in her article, the government's denial of vaccine-caused heart damage initially was intense. A major paper was withdrawn under pressure, and a Centers for Disease Control article disputed the vaccine role in the deaths of 2 boys. However, as we here at Trial Site News have since covered, the CDC now acknowledges the vaccine myocarditis link, even if asserting it is, quote, rarely reported. Doctors know now to look for it at the very least, and research has suggested that it could be more prevalent than first thought. Meanwhile, on multisystem inflammatory syndrome, the FDA Zoom meeting ultimately turned on a simple question: how many pediatric cases of a condition that cripples multiple bodily symptoms is too many? According to Peter Marks of the FDA, there were 58 vaccinated children, 5 to 11 years old, that have been diagnosed with the inflammatory syndrome, which research shows puts nearly 60% in intensive care units and involves heart, kidney, respiratory, and blood damage. However, of those 58, Marks told the group 54 had laboratory evidence of prior COVID. 2 did not, and 2 were, quote, unclear. So the 54 were then discounted. Marks said that at the end of the day, given 7.3 million vaccinated children involved here, it was impossible to make a clear association. He then pointed to a recent Lancet article that found 21 cases among 12 to 20-year-olds, but concluded, as with myocarditis, the condition was rare. He said that the multisystem inflammatory syndrome association is too weak, either in adults or children. Now, these vaccine-injured people are among some 20,000 in quickly growing social media groups. For more than 2 years, they have been ostracized socially, refused medical help under the safe and effective dictum, plied with drugs to help them sleep, walk, think, and talk, and told, some of them, that they were suffering pandemic-related anxiety or psychosis. As Mary Beth Pfeiffer wrote in her article, she said that a single video shared with me by a bereaved mother captured a sliver of the group's pain. A propped cell phone shows a couple dancing in a sunlit living room to Roy Orbison's Only the Lonely. They gently twirl, laugh, and embrace. And at 2 a.m. that night, May 6, 2021, Victor Castillo Simoes, 34, suffered severe chest pain and jaw numbness, and he collapsed as help arrived. It had been 16 days since his first Pfizer shot. Studies show Simoes died of aortic dissection or tearing. His blood was littered with severe inflammatory markers that had been associated with the COVID and vaccine spike protein. His mother, grief-stricken, reported her son's adverse event to the CDC tracking systems, among more than 14,000 domestic COVID vaccine deaths reported to date. She said that she was profoundly shocked when no one from the CDC or the FDA reached out to her to investigate her son's death and possible safety problems with the vaccine. In the virtual call with the FDA, she asked, "How can you help me? Please learn from the mistakes that have been made." Peter Marks of the FDA paused and then responded to her saying, "Thanks for sharing that. I'm so sorry for your loss." And on it went. In Mary's article, she shares more stories like this that these injured individuals shared with Peter Marks of the FDA, to which he would often reply with a "Thanks for sharing that." So where then is the group React 19 looking to go from here? Beyond FDA affirmation of harm, React 19 wants major reform of the 2 current programs that exist today, ostensibly to serve people injured by vaccines. Under the U.S. law called the PrEP Act, which is the Public Readiness and Emergency Preparedness Act for medical countermeasures against COVID-19, pharmaceutical manufacturers have nearly complete immunity. They cannot be sued for money damages in court, except for willful misconduct. The government's primary vaccine harm program, the Vaccine Injury Compensation Fund, does not even cover COVID shots. A second program, Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program, is an anemic consumer protection measure. And since 2010, the CICP has paid just $6 million on 30 claims, and 400 were denied in the same time. And for COVID alone, nearly 10,000 claims have since been filed, with none paid, and based on the program's track record, there is a slim chance that many will succeed. You see, once rejected, the decisions are final, with no appeal or due process. According to React 19, HHS has actively supported mandating vaccines in numerous contexts and downplayed adverse effects in a purported effort to combat vaccine hesitancy. As such, HHS essentially serves as judge, jury, and interested party. Now, this small group of vaccine-injured people are representative of something much larger. More than 400 COVID vaccine death claims alone have been filed, among thousands more injuries. Group members who believed in government say the experience has changed them. As one of the alleged vaccine-injured put it, "As a nurse, I never realized if you are vaccine-injured in the US, not only is there no care for you, there is no organization fighting for you. It is indisputable that the medical system is failing us. It is the biggest shock of my medical career." Now, in the article by Mary Beth Pfeiffer, she wrote that if the FDA wants a case study in cause and effect, it should look no further than Maddie Garay, now 14, a participant in a Pfizer vaccine trial, and was diagnosed last June with chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. And while it is described as a disorder with nerve swelling and irritation or inflammation that leads to a loss of strength or sensation, that does not begin to describe Maddie's struggles. Nonetheless, trial investigators had little interest in Maddie's condition, in her liver, kidney, gastrointestinal issues, and bloody urine. Her mother claims that emergency room doctors at the hospital where the trial was held initially laughed at them. A pain specialist was then recommended, and the FDA did not reach out. As her mother put it, she was in a trial. They know very well what happened. They know very well what was happening. And lastly, as she put it, we thought it was safe. And that brings us to the end of Mary Beth's article on trialsitenews.com. If you'd like to read the article in full, simply head on over to the website where you can find it under the title FDA to Vax Injured, We Got Nothing. It is an excellent read and a story powerful enough that I felt it worth sharing with you all here today. And that, my friends, will bring our episode to a close once more. As always, thank you so much for joining me on the program today. From Trial Site News, I am Adrian, and I will see you all